Hello everyone, so this video is about explaining how this win or die board game works. So basically it's like a one-on-one skirmish game. This video would be divided into 4 parts: unboxing, setup, rule explaining, and some more information about the future direction of this game. So feel free to jump to whatever part you like. Alright, so now let's start with the part 1, which is unboxing. So in this part, I'm gonna unbox this game so you kind of know what kind of component it has and what is what. These 2 boards are the war console, so it's kind of like a skill tree for your army. This is how the organizer gonna looks like in the final product. So pretty much these are just the 3D printed prototype I have. So this little boxes would be the faction box, which will contain everything within the faction. Pick a faction you want, you just take the tray, you unfold the map, and you can start playing. So that's the idea behind these faction box. It will have some kind of like summary on like what kind of unit it has for the faction. But like right now, this is kind of like the recommended lines up if you don't know how to or what kind of a unit you want to assemble for your startup. Because like essentially like you would have like 20 crystal to spend to kind of customize your army within your faction. So this is like a quick start setup so you can just start playing. And you see it like these are all the different units for the faction. So you can easily pick out like let's say if you want 1 of this unit and 2 of these unit and maybe 3 of these, so you can just kind of like pick them out quickly. So that's what I'm saying. You can just start playing by pick up the faction box. So that's why we think the organizer is kind of important for this game, and we spend time to kind of develop it. And this is the main map right now. Keep in mind this is also work in progress, so hopefully it will be a little bit more fancier, but like right now we try to make it as clear as it can, so like there is no mistaken on what kind of terrain it is. And this is the 2-player organizer. So ideally, you would just hand one of the player one of this tray, and they pick one of the faction, and boom, they're ready to start. All right. So what's within the player trays? Okay, these are the central piece of this game. So it's kind of like strategical. You will slot in your units, and then it will stay hidden. But once you engage in combat, you will have to review it, and then your opponent can strategize against like what kind of unit are you using. So this is the basic idea of this game. So this is the actual game piece that you will be playing on. These are just like the faction selection cards. Like if you want to do like a blind pick, you can just choose your faction, and then at the same time your opponent gonna choose their faction, and then like 3, 2, 1, you're gonna review it, and that would be what you guys fighting with for that game. And these are called enhancement. We will talk about it later, but pretty much it's just a little buffs you can purchase for your units. And these are the disc that's going to be used on the war console board. And of course we have dice here, and this is the command token. Pretty much everything you do in this game would need to spend one of these. And these are Titan Crystal, which is the resource in the game, and some more damage token, just in case the Dow is not enough. Mercenary unit cards. So like for each unit, it will has a card that shows all the stats and all the detail ability and the cost of the certain unit. It would also has a corresponding token that can be slot into the game piece in order to play. And it also has some vital information about this unit, like all the attribution and how much it costs. So I guess that would be the end of the unboxing. Now let's set up this game and we can start playing. Like I said, all I need is just grab a tray, grab another faction. Let's get the Yavel Alliance, and then bam, you're all set. The first step, set up the map. Already done it. Actually, you need to roll a dice to determine who will be the first player. Like let's say, oh, okay, I roll a 6. The other guy rolled a 5. So I'm the first player, I guess. The second step would be set up your barrack. So the barrack would be essentially the unit pool that you can purchase from. Actually, instead of doing the step 2 and 3, let's do the new player startup, which is just choose one of the lines up and then go for it. For example, let's try the first one. So no matter which lines up you could choose, you would always have a leader. And the leader comes for free. It doesn't cost you any crystal. Normally, when you assemble your legion, you will have 20 crystals to spend. So in this case, we would have the Pope of Light as our leader. So that would be in our rock. Every leader has 2 forms, so you can choose in between. This lineup recommend this one, so let's just take that. Usually, you would also choose like 2 mercenary, which is like some neutral units every faction can choose. Like you are allowed to choose like 2 out of 5 for the base game. I'll just take these 2. So let's say I'll take this and this. So these cards are my Barak. So this is the units I can choose from. And then based on this lineup, I'm gonna start with 1 Light Pope, this guy right here. And then 4 Papal Guard, this guy right here. Like you see, there's like a cost on the bottom left, or you can find it on the upper left here. So essentially, I spent 12 crystal here to recruit these 4 guards. I just gonna slot them in. Keep in mind, like at this time, your opponent is probably doing the same thing. So you would try to hide it from your opponent so they don't know what exactly lineup you're using. And right here we have 2 crossbowmen and 3 more shield guard. And that would bring me up to 20 crystal, because this is like another 8 plus 12, that's 20. So, and then it says I have none of the crystal left. Because like in the normal rule, if you like assembly, let's say like using 18 crystal, so you will have like 2 crystal left. So you actually get to keep those. But the only restriction is by the end of the setup, you should have at least 7 units on board. So that doesn't mean like you can just buy 1 unit and then keep the rest of, I don't know, 15 of them. That's not how they work. You have to have at least 7 units on board. So in this case, it's actually the full legion. I use all 10 of my game piece. So that's like the maximum unit you can have on the table. All right, so that's like the step 2 and 3 done. The 4th step is also done. It's pretty much just slotting in all these units. And then the next step is just deploy the legion. Starting with the first player, they can deploy all the units. Let's just deploy them randomly within the last 2 lines on your side. So technically speaking, this is your baseline. And on the other side, that's your opponent's baseline. So the rule says you can either place your initial units on the baseline or adjacent to the baseline. So pretty much the 2 last row. One thing we forgot is to mark our morale and fatigue. So your fatigue gonna start at 0, which is at the skull. Your morale would be like adding up all the cost of your army. So it should be 20 at this setup. And then as the starting player, on first round, you will only have 5 command. So for the later on, every player would have 7 command for them to use. But like for the first turn, like the first player only have like 5 of them. So I guess now we are done with the setup. Imagine your opponent is doing the same. So now let's go to the rule teaching. Let's talk about how to win this game. So there's 2 ways to win this game, or should I say there's 2 ways to lose this game. First way to lose it is once your morale is at the same space as your fatigue, then you will lose your game. There's a concept in this game called morale. Morale is essentially all the cost of your army adding up. By spending 20 crystal, usually you would got like 20 morale. Like there are some exceptions. I would explain those later. Every time a unit being eliminated from the game, the owner will lower their legion's fatigue a certain amount. For example, if this crossbowman is being killed, it says it costs 1 crystal, and by killing this crossbowman, your morale would reduce by 1. So if all the unit die, then naturally you're gonna lose the game because you would drop to the 0. So you would probably ask, isn't that meaning like just kill all the unit, then you win the game? Not necessary, because remember the leaders that comes for free, it's actually gonna cost you 10 morale when a leader dies. It says on the card, it has like a passive ability saying that fallen leader, so our legion lost 10 morale when I die. So that's pretty much it. If the leader die, it would cost you 10 morale. So that would be one way to kind of like suddenly end the game, is to assassinate your opponent's leader. The second thing to keep in mind is that every time you're in your turn, your fatigue gonna raise 1 point. That means in later round, it's easier to finish off your opponent. And not only that, once the legion's fatigue reach to the 8th space, they will also lose the game. So in this base game, if you are the starting player, you'll probably want to finish the game before turn 8, because you will lose after turn 8, simply because you will reach to the 8th fatigue earlier. That's the 2 way to lose your game. So now we can start talk about what can you do on your turn. On your turn, there's 3 phases. The first one will be start of turn phase, the second one will be action phase, and the third one will be end of turn phase. So at the start of turn phase, nothing much happened. It pretty much just let you recover all the command tokens on the board, with the exception of the first turn, because like at first turn, the first player only get 5 command tokens. And the second thing to do at the start of turn phase is to check terrain resolution. It usually means if you occupy one of these mines at this time, you can gain a Titan Crystal, which is the resource of this game, and you can purchase more units. And then the third one would be upkeeping. Let's say you have some effects last until the next turn, then this would be the time it will end it. Or some other ability would refers to this timing to check whatever gonna happen at this phase. So that would conclude the start of turn phase. Now let's get to the juicy part, which is the action phase. So during your action phase, essentially you would spend your commands to do stuff. One very important rule is at a time, a unit can only hold 3 command tokens on it, which means once it has 3 command tokens on it, it cannot be commanded in any other way. So there's 5 ways to spend your command token. The first one would be move. It's pretty straightforward. Every time you activate a unit, you just put your command token on top of that unit and then do whatever you want to do with it. For example, if you want to move some unit, you just move certain spaces based on its speed. Speed is one of the attribution on the unit. For example, you can either refer to the unit cards or you can find it on your unit token. It's the same thing. You see that little boot over there? It has 2 right next to it. It means it has speed of 2, which means with each move, it can move up to 2 space. Keep in mind, in this game, you cannot go over other units, no matter it's from your opponent or it's your own unit. You always go around the units. So that's the move action. The second action you can take, obviously, would be attack. So attack would work like this. Let me just get an enemy in here. Okay. So attack, how do you attack? When you want to attack someone, of course you need to command your unit first. Now you review your unit to check your attack range. So normally all the unit would attack adjacent space with melee attack. But some of the unit actually have range attack. For example, of course the crossbowman would have a range attack right here. It says it can attack from 1 to 3 range instead. You review your unit to check its range. Once you declare attack, you have to choose a unit within your range to actually attack it. So now I would choose this enemy unit right here. So once you chose your target has to review that unit as well. Because in this game, there are units that are flying. For example, this is actually a flying unit. Flying is a passive ability, which means it would be always in effect when it has revealed. So since it's flying says it cannot be attacked by melee attack that's from a non-flying unit, which means only flying units can melee attack flying unit, but you can always range attack flying units. So probably I chose a bad example right here. So let's change it. Let's change to something that you can actually attack. Okay, so now it's better. The attack is kind of successful, and so now we can proceed to resolve this attack. By resolve this attack, you will look at the attack value of this unit. For example, this unit here has the attack value of 0. The attack value is the number of dice you can roll. So you might ask, like, now this unit has 0 attack. How is that making any sense? That is because you can roll additional dice based on how many allies you have around you. Adjacent to you. If I have a formation like this, then these two units would actually providing +2 to the attacking unit, because like each ally around that unit would provide extra attack power and counter attack power. Let's say this is the situation, and that's 0 + 2, so you can roll 2 dice. And I roll a 2 and a 6. For this unit, its hit rate is 3 or higher. You can see it on this unit token, or you can find it on the unit cards. So that means I only produce 1 hit. Keep in mind, like, all the unit starting with 0 damage. So this is the damage tracker for each unit. So in this case, I deal 1 damage to this enemy, so it will suffer 1. If a unit suffered damage that's exceeding its health, like for example, this unit has 2 health, which is the red number over there. If it ever has 2 damage on it, it would die. Luckily, like this time I only deal 1 damage, so it survived. Once a unit survive an attack or any kind of damage from the adjacent space, it can do a counter attack. The counter attack is based on the blue number on the unit, which is the counter power. On this unit it's 3, so it rolls 3 dice plus any surrounding allies for this unit. But since it's the only unit on board, it doesn't have any ally, so it would be 3 + 0, still a 3. So you roll a die. Every 3 or higher would be a hit, so that's 3, 5, 6. That's like a 3 damage counter attack. So now this unit gonna suffer 3 damage. Normally, that's how to resolve an attack. Keep in mind, if you attack it from range, then the counterattack would not happen. Additionally, this unit right here actually has a passive ability that allows it to perform an actual counterattack even before the attack landed. With that ability in mind, the actual sequence should be roll counterattack for this unit first, then this unit roll the attack dice, and this unit can roll the counter attack again. But for the demonstration purpose, I just simply ignore that ability. But usually you will have to resolve that passive. It's like a mandatory thing you need to do. Keep in mind, when you do a range attack, for example, like if I use this crossbowman to attack this unit, you will need to have a line of sight. By having a line of sight, you will need to connect the 2 center points of those hexes to see if it crosses the terrain that block line of sight. For example, on this map, the only thing that's gonna block your line of sight would be the forest. So in this case, I can actually attack this unit because it is not blocking by the forest. But once it gets behind the forest, if you connect the 2 dots, it across the forest, then it doesn't have the line of sight. So that means I cannot attack the other unit that's hidden behind the forest. Another effect of forest, if you're inside a forest, only the adjacent unit can attack you, which means usually when you hide in the forest another range attack cannot target you unless they walk up to your face. So that's how attack works. Now the third option you have is to call for allies. Call for allies, which means you can spend crystal to buy more unit onto the board. For example, let's say if I have 2 crystals, so I can purchase another unit for my barrack. So I look at my barrack and then chose the unit I want to purchase. I need to be able to afford it in order to summon it onto the board. Keep in mind, this call for ally action can only activate it by the unit that at the baseline. In order to summon more unit onto the board, you need to have at least 1 unit at your baseline to keep that option open. Otherwise, you will need to spend action to actually move it back to the baseline. Then you can perform the call for allies. For example, I can spend 2 crystal to purchase 1 more crossbowman. And you will ask like, well, this is only costing 1 crystal, why are you using 2? Because there's another thing you can do when you're purchasing a unit, either during call for ally or during the setup, is to purchase an enhancement for it, which means buff one of the attributes of certain unit. For example, I can choose use 1 crystal to buy an attack enhancement. So that way, it would actually increase my attack by 2. In this case, for the crossbowman, it would double its attack. Now it would roll 4 dice on attack instead of 2. So that's how enhancement works. Each unit can have up to 6 different enhancements if you want. Then you need to place it either on the left or on the right of the unit you just activate to purchase this unit. And also you need to remember to increase your morale based on the cost. The extra cost you pay for the enhancement doesn't include, so I actually just gain 1 morale instead of 2. Alright, the fourth option would be activating abilities. There are 4 kinds of ability in this game. There will be action, passive, ultimate, and reaction. Only the passive ability doesn't require activation to actually make it work. So passive ability would always has its effect when that unit has been revealed. For example, this shield guard right here has a passive. It says shield wall. When I suffer physical damage from enemies' range or long range attack, I suffer 2 less damage. So if someone attacked me from range, I'll suffer 2 less damage. That's how the passive works. It doesn't require any activation. As long as it's been revealed, I mean, it would definitely be revealed if it's been attacked, because that is one of the requirements to attack someone. You can see the passive ability have this throw symbol on it. The second type of ability would be action skill. For example, in this pyromancer, it has like this sword symbol. Action ability actually require you use an activate token onto the unit and then reveal it to actually use the ability. Well, this is not the right unit. Like it would be this unit right here. Just pretend I have this unit here. So in order to activate this action ability, you will need to spend a command token, reveal it. You just execute the ability as it says. It says Firestone, reveal and deal 1 magical damage to all units in a straight line from me, ignoring the terrain and the line of sight. Keep in mind, each unit can only use each action ability once per round. But once per round, more accurately would be I can only use once until I regain the command token from it. Then I can use it again. And let's talk about ultimate. Ultimate works just like the action ability. The only difference is it can only be used once per game. For example, this pyromancer right here, it has a ultimate. Keep in mind this is ultimate symbol, like a little star. You use it once and then it's gone. For example, if you want to use this fireball on this pyromancer, you would spend another command token on it, and then you can deal 3 magical damage to an exposed unit anywhere on the map. As long as it's been exposed, you can snipe it with the fireball. Once you use ultimate like this, you will mark it with one of these ultimate has been used token. You can either put it like that, or you can put it like that so it's more secure. or you can even put it on the back. But I like to slot in here if there's a space here. So the last ability will be reaction ability. Reaction ability, it's a little bit trickier. As a matter of fact, like this entire faction doesn't have any reaction ability. Reaction ability usually would has a specific timing that you need to pay attention to use it. When the window arises, you can spend one of the action token and then use it. And then you just execute it like the ability says. If a reaction ability doesn't have a specific timing, then it would be before your opponent's command, which means first, you need to reserve some action token that you're going to use it to activate the reaction ability, which means in this example, in first turn, I only have 5 command token. I would use 4 of them and then keep 1 of them during the opponent's turn in order to activate any reaction ability I have. If your opponent have unused command token during your turn, you will need to ask them if they want to use reaction every time before you actually do an activation your own. They will ask, do you want to use the reaction? No? Okay, I'm going to do my thing, move, and then again, do you want to use it? No, I'm going to do another thing. Do you want to do it? Oh, okay, you want to do it. Then you do it. Then I can do my thing. So that's the gist of it. Fortunately, not much unit has reaction ability. The last option, you can actually ignore it for a while because it's for like advanced mode, or should I say standard mode. It's pretty straightforward. You have these 7 different skills. If you want, you can use a command token on any unit, and then you can choose one tactic out of the 7 to activate it. Once you activate a war console tactic, it will be in effect permanently for this entire game. And you have to execute it, even though sometimes it might not work in your favor. It would have some chemistry with different factions, like some factions work well with certain tactics, and that brings another layer of strategy to the game. That's all 5 things you can do. And now on your action phase, you can actually end your turn anytime you want. You don't have to use all your command, but most of the time you probably should spend your command unless you are saving it for your reaction ability. You can announce you end your turn. You would raise your fatigue by 1, and then you will pass the turn to your opponent, and that's the game. Like it just go back and forward between you and your opponent until someone can finish off their opponent. Someone can drop their opponent's morale down to their fatigue, or someone can outlast their opponent. That will be all for just playing the game, but I will also throw in some details if you want to hear about it. For example, there are units that's called giant unit. A giant unit, it's so big that cannot be hide, so it would be exposed from the beginning of the game. So it would be like that, and you would use the base this way to keep track of the health. And then another thing is the giant unit actually block line of sight, and then there's also flying. I mentioned flying unit can go over other unit, or other unit can go over flying unit. Also, like flying unit on the terrain would not activate any terrain. It has no effect to occupy mine. It cannot hide behind the forest, all those things. And then there's one unit I actually want to show you guys. That's one of the special ones. I need to show you guys how to set up this game piece properly. In this Da Dao Empire, there's a unit like a tank. It actually has 2 forms. So at the start of the game, you can choose, like if you purchase it, you can choose a form to slot it in. Usually it would be the tank form, because once it's switched to the stationary form, it cannot move. So it would be not ideal like at the beginning of the game, because you want to move the tank forward. You slot in your tank, you make your move, and then now you can use its ability. It has like an action ability to switch form, which means it can switch from the tag form into the stationary form. So for this unit, you simply just slot the other form into the back of the game piece. And now once it's revealed, you can just like switch in between by flipping it. Because one of the action ability on each form is just to switch into the other form. So this is why we have this two-sided for the game piece. Or for other pieces, if you want, you can put up your flag. Just put some unused unit backside into the backside of the base, so that now you will have a pretty cool sigil of your faction. And now talking about the component, like obviously it's a prototype. There are things we already have been changed, but just haven't reflect onto the current prototype. For example, this war console would, in a different size, actually slot in perfectly and become the lid of this tray. And also this faction reference sheet will also act like a lid for this faction tray. We're also thinking about to change the command token to this form. So once it's been revealed, it would not block your unit's info like that. So that's another change we've been thinking about. Yeah, obviously the player assistance sheet is still in progress, game rules still in progress. By the way, all the cards, I know that the readability right now is not the best, but we already in the progress of symbolize some of the common passive ability. For example, flying, giant, range attack, those would be condensed into certain symbols. And then we will have it on the reference sheet as well, or on the back of the rulebook. So that way we can have more real estate for the more complicated abilities. We are aware that the texts are all over the places, and those would be adjusted to fit the graphic design standard. Because right now this is kind of like the first pass of our graphic design team. It will be adjusted in the later version of the game. Thank you for your time. If you have any question, don't hesitate to contact me. I'll answer your rule question personally. Hope you enjoy the game.